Hello everybody and welcome to another playthrough here on the channel, this time for Pro and Expert Division for the Attitude Tour 18-hole cup. Have in mind that the video, or like the me playing here in the video, will be with variable wins, so it's not the win that you have in the tournament. Also, it's not the same win strength, because the win strength, or like the wind, is going to be boosted, so it's going to be even tougher to compensate for the wind direction, which means it's going to be harder to drop shots, and that might be something people do enjoy. Before we move on here in the video, make sure that you do hit the thumbs up button, also subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification. For those of you that are looking to improve your game even more, scan the QR code here on the screen or go directly to patreon.com/golfclashtommy or patreon.com/GCTQuick9 to scan the QR code as well for premium guides for all the game modes in Golf Clash. Let's go to hole number 1. Hole number 7, in tailwind, we're gonna play on the right hand side, and the reason we're gonna do that is because we do want to get as close to the green possible, and if we do have a tailwind, this is the way to go about that. If we would be having a crosswind or a headwind, then we're going to have to play on the left on the fairway to just get as far down possible to open up for the green from distance. Adjustment, maximum distance plus 10, push up to max, and then we're gonna play full freaking blast overpower. Max topspin as well is recommended, and a bar or two side spin to the right. The reason we want to play with max topspin is, once again, to go as far down the fairway possible. Max overpower, and try to hit perfect. Bouncing on the fairway, and it rolls nicely down. Have in mind here that you can play with a power 4, power 5 ball as well to gain even more distance, which in my book are recommended. I'm showing with a free-to-play ball here to keep as much as possible free-to-play, but using a power 5 ball such as Berserker also is free-to-play. So again, the further we are on the fairway, the better it's going to be for the second shot. Because now you can see we're playing with a Grizzly here, but we are very close to min line with our Thorn, and if we can choose to play with a short iron over a long iron, we should be doing that all day and every day. Aim with the ball guideline to the hole here, and I'm using 10% elevation and then true club distance. So it's gonna be whatever the club distance tells you to be. So check where maximum distance line are and where the minimum distance line are, and judge yourself. Adjustments done, sent to the ball, and hit perfect. Perfect ball here is going to give us a very good chance, but unfortunately, you can see me hitting a great ball, and I do dislike great balls so much because it will never give us a chance for a drop if we haven't adjusted it wrong from the beginning. Perfect ball would have been super duper close if not going in the hole. So hole number 7 here is a really tough one, especially in headwind and crosswind, when we have to lay up and play with a wood club, with all the bunkers being in the way, then that's gonna be mainly a birdie. But if we do have a tailwind in any shape or form, and we can play the shot that we do have here in the playthrough, we definitely have a chance for an eagle. Hole number 2 offers many different ways of playing this hole. This is a more aggressive play for a rough bump, which is not as common, at least not in my playthroughs, and that's why I wanted to spice it up a little bit and show a rough bump here instead of going for the standard bounce up and roll back, which is also a way of playing. The bounce up and the roll back is on the left hand side and using the slope on the green to let the ball fall back down into the hole. Obviously, that's not by doing a rough bump at all. So what we're doing here now is that we're aiming at the very edge of the rough line with a P8 ball, so a P8 min line. And from there, we are adjusting, and then we will land further back than where we aim, because we do have a headwind that will push the ball a little bit further back. So a headwind is absolutely perfect here to do a rough bump with. If we do have a tailwind, it may be a little bit problematic as we do pull down into the sand, and that can give us all types of bounces, and it's not something that I would personally recommend so much to be doing. So the rough bump. Now, there will be players out there that are watching this thinking like, why do you always have to go this aggressive? However, though, when it comes to that type of thinking, the rough bumps are in general the best way of getting consistent drops on especially part 3s, but also on other types of play, because what it does is when it hits the ground, it minimizes the effect of the wind after it hits the ground. And that's why those are very interesting type of play for many players out there. However, though, like I said in the beginning, if you not fancy that type of play, you can always bounce on the left-hand side on the fairway, use the slope on the green to let the ball fall back down. It will have a chance to drop, absolutely, but it will not be as consistent as a rough bump on a general basis. Hole number 3 of the Southern Pines is absolutely awful in my opinion. This is where we are mainly playing for an eagle only. The only time we may go for an albatross, even though it will be an extremely tough albatross, would be if we do have some tailwind off tee. Now you can see I'm using the best club that I do have. I'm using the club with the most power and the most topspin possible. I'm using a berserker ball to keep the here free to play. However, though, if you have the possibility to use a topspin boost ball or something like that, that would be much better, because a topspin boost ball would obviously get you much further down the fairway. I'm not messing around really on the drive. I'm just putting it straight down the middle, as much topspin that I can, and I hit and I go max overpower. Knowing that even if I do have a shaky needle, I will still be able to hit a good left or a good right if so wanted. Now, here I'm playing just purely for a safe eagle, going on the right hand side. Here you can go on the left hand side as well. The tricky part with this is that you need to gouge the speed in the best possible way. If you come in with too much speed, you will roll into the back rough. And obviously, with not enough speed, you will get stuck in the first bunker. That's the tricky part here. So you can see I'm not even attempting getting this ball at the pin here, because I don't feel it's a realistic possibility to do so. Now, if we do have tailwind, we can use the tailwind to carry by using overpower and not have to deal with a shaky needle and stuff like that. Now we are by the end of the green. From here it is a short wedge for eagle. However, if you're playing this hole in a tournament or in a third play format, you will see many of the opponents struggling just making the eagle. So focus first and foremost, make yourself an eagle. If then the wind is very favorable and you're able to use very good gear and ball, then the albatross might be a possibility. For hole number 1 of the Feng Basin, we are going to play a no movement here when we do have tailwind, but also crosswind. 4 topspin, 3 left spin, and we're using our apocalypse here to make sure that we do have all the power possible. Even the lower level apox will still reach to the same spot, as here it doesn't open up at max P3 line. Max plus 30 P3 numbers, using a 0.8 ball of left curl together with circle drop overpower. You can see we bounce center fairway to the other fairway, and then it rolls to a semi-long putt, where obviously we could play with slightly less topspin and maybe attack the pin a little bit better. But it is a tricky one, having to double bounce over that rough, whereof obviously if you clip the rough, you're going to end up with a wedge. If you end up with a wedge, you play it EB school plus a 20 and whatever Powerball number you are getting or having. If you do have a headwind, you can still play a similar type of play, but then we do recommend to play with a P4 or P5 ball. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of overpower, and it's going to be a very big gamble. For hole number 2, we are going to start with a power 0 ball when we do have tailwind, crosswind, or headwind. This as we want to try to find max or min line here, using the grizzly at max in tailwind and crosswind, and in headwind we're going to play with our sniper in at min line. The reason for that is that it's so much more than easier to get consistency with our shot, as we do have a firm reference point. If we would have just been having a floating landing spot, then that's going to be very easy to it's going to be hard to replicate. It's easier to say that way. So starting with the white ring by the wood by the water, adjust max plus a 20. And here I'm using a 2.8 backspin together with 1.5 bar of right spin. Burning the edge here, but obviously when it comes to par 3s, especially when we're playing this much downhill, it's gonna be required to do some wind angle tweaks and stuff like that to get the drops on a more consistent basis. But hole number 2 offers a decent chance for an hole-in-one here of the new beautiful course. On hole number 3, we are going to put our target at the top of plus 10, which would reflect using max line with Apocalypse level 4, for an example, or also other drivers that do not have the full power. Using 3 left spin and 5.8 top spin. Again, 5.8 top spin is to give even those of you that do not play with higher level clubs a chance to replicate what I'm trying to show. Adjust max plus 10 P3. We're going to go full blast with, in this case, I'm using 1.5 ball of left curl, which is a tiny bit too little. It's still fine though, but look how close I am getting to the right side of the rough here. Lands nicely on the fairway, but with the rollout, you see how close we're getting to the right rough, and that's too close for comfort. So we're gonna want to increase the left curl just slightly. So max plus 10 on the drive, 5.8 top spin, 3 left spin, and that's gonna leave us with a grizzly on the approach. Because I do believe there is value to playing with the grizzly instead. Instead of playing with a sniper if having to lay up from further down. Alright, so now let's take a look at the reference. We're using a reference that is a top white ring pin check, frame check, blue ring now by the bunker and by the wood. The reason I'm doing that type of landing position is to find a landing position that we can replicate, which meaning that we need references. Having to just have a floating landing spot is never really going to be super consistent. So I'd rather have this and then having spins to pin. Adjustment here now, I'm using here we should be adjusting 48% slider with no elevation, P3 numbers. I'm adjusting a little bit too little, 0.1 too little, hence the specifying the 48% slider instead. Now, very unlucky getting a 360 painfully around the hole, but this hole 3 here offers, in my opinion, a very strong chance for an albatross. Hole number 4 of the Southern Pines here from the second tee. This has always been a pretty tricky par 4, I must say. Not so much difficult in terms of what way to play, but tricky in the sense that they have not made the green as friendly for us Golf Clash players. Here, starting at the P6 max rest with the quarterback to set a consistent spin, which is 5 top spin, 3 right spin. Obviously, there are multiple ways of getting this drive down here, either to the left side or to the right side. That's completely up to you which way you want to go. Elevation, 10% elevation, so plus 10 is what we are using. And for this type of play here in this video, it's to just play it safely down the fairway, and then we will be relying on our sniper for the approach to attack the pin. If you do have a tailwind, you could consider smashing the ball much closer towards the green and have a much shorter second shot, such as a short iron or even a wedge or something like that. Now you can see the second shot, and I think this is the most common way of playing this hole nowadays, though, especially if you're going for the eagle. It's not the easiest way, though, because, it's the easiest way to attack the pin for an eagle, but it's not an easy way to play because there are a couple of things that you need to take into consideration here, and that is when you do have a wind angle like this, for an example, you're going to adjust from a higher to a lower point, which means that you will be losing distance compared to, so where you're aiming now, you're going to land further back than that just because you're pulling down to a lower point. If you're not using a push-up or you're using some overpower to compensate. You can see here in the video that overpower is used as a compensation method. And that's the same, let's say that you're adjusting from a lower point and adjusting from a lower point up to a higher point. then that's also going to be something that's going to be had to be compensated for, because if you're adjusting from a lower to a higher point, then you will gain distance instead. A very important lesson to have, not just when you're playing tournament, but also when you play any other game mode in Golf Clash. Hole number 6 in the 5th anniversary tournament is going to offer us a tough par 3. But since we discovered rough bump here, we have actually been having a super good success with this hole. The important part here though is to avoid the glitchy spot. And to do that, it's going to be obviously hard to do that all the time, but it's going to try to do different type of spins regardless of what wind direction you have. This to try to get to the green at the same spot all the time. So using one backspin here, a little bit of left spin, you can see that the ball guideline go up the hill to fall down towards the pin, because that's the way to do on this hole. Medium distance, 10% elevation here, and I'm using a wind 4 ball here, which is important to have in mind here, because using a ball with higher wind could, especially in tailwind, makes you go in between club. That's why wind 4 is perfect here, and it doesn't matter if it's a wind 4 power 0, power 1, power 2, power 3, you should still have room to adjust there. Medium distance plus 10, it rolls up the hill, fall back down, right the pin for a beautiful hole-in-one on hole number 6. So for hole number 3 in the 9-hole cup, here we're gonna play with a power slice, and we're gonna use a 4 topspin, 2 right spin. I'm gonna use a tight. You see I'm stretching out to be just to the left of the brown rough patch there by all the trees. Max overpower, max curl to the right, and then full slice to the right. The idea here is to get the ball as far down to the right possible. You may be wondering, why do complicate it so much to go with a power slice? It's because I would say that's the only way to get to where we are now, and therefore the only way to get ourselves into a very good chance for an albatross. Let's say that you have headwind from tee, you can't play this type of shot, you're gonna have to then play just straight down the fairway and then transport the ball to green with a cataclysm or a big dog to make sure that you secure the eagle. So it's only going to be an eagle play if that's going to happen. But if we do have tailwind, once again, we can play the drive that I showed on screen, and then we get ourselves in a super good chance for an albatross. Measure the club distance to get the correct club distance here, and we're going to play this with 20% elevation. You see here now, I'm measuring the club distance to see what type of range I'm in. I position myself here on the fairway. I'm not using any spin for this shot. You can obviously use backspin or topspin if you would like, but I like to play without any spins if I have room to do that, because it gives me a very natural first and second bounce, and that is easier for me at least to read. Once again, 20% elevation, center the ball, hit perfect, and this is going to be a super good chance for an albatross. Bounce, bounce, bounce. Can we get it? We can. Swirl it in from the right and 180 in the hole. I will take that all day and every day on a tough par 5, such as the Southern Pines. For hole number 7 of the Southern Pines, here we are playing on the left-hand side. If you do have a really nice and good going tailwind, you can actually bounce over the water on the right-hand side. The difficult part with the right-hand side is obviously the water, but also that the green slopes massively downhill, and there is a risk to get into a situation where you do have an impossible putt, and that would suck so much. And that's obviously not what we want to have, but with some risk, there is definitely some reward as well, that you can be on the green or just by the green for a simple eagle. And now we lay up, we go left-hand side, adjust 10% elevation with true club distance. So in this case, we are roughly at mid-distance with our apoc, and that's what we're using as well. Don't have to play with a king slayer if you don't want to. You can play with a regular kingmaker and obviously other ball types, as the intention is purely to bounce over the rough and the sand, to have a consistent rollout, without really flirting with any bunkers or rough whatsoever. Second shot, we are using our long iron here. Here's up to you to decide what long iron you want to play with as well, obviously. Grizzly level 9 or level 7 plus, I would say, is a perfect club to use. You can also use B52 level 7 or 8. The reason I'm saying a high level B52 and Grizzly level 7 plus is because it has a good ball guideline. Both of those sorts of clubs with those levels do have 4.5 ball guideline, and that will help immensely in terms of trying to aim here. Now, either you go for a ball to roll back down the green like that, or you're going directly at the pin with your ball guideline. That's completely up to you. It depends on what you feel works really well. At the end of the day, we're obviously looking to settle in for an eagle here, because this is a par 4 where there will be players shooting an eagle. The bounce on the fairway, up the bank, and then it falls down, and if we're a little bit lucky, we get the ball to drop for the eagle. What's not shown here on the replay is that I'm starting with a power 4 ball. This to find absolute min line, so make sure to pack your grizzly or a backbone to make sure to find a firm min line. And this is for crosswind, but also for headwind. So 5.5 bar of topspin, and I'm looking to have the ball guideline through the hole. And once I've found that spot with my target at P4 min line, I'm swapping to a navigator ball. You can obviously play with a ball with much more wind resistance if you would prefer that. Adjust here in headwind, I'm using max with no elevation P1 numbers. If we are playing in direct crosswind, we are playing min numbers instead with no elevation. And the reason we are switching like that is to keep the same true elevation, but using the club distance to compensate for the different wind angles. Obviously, if you're playing in tailwind, you can't play exactly the same way if it's a strong tailwind, but as we are starting at P4 min line and swapping to a P1 ball, we will still be able to play sniper. But then the ball guideline needs to be short of hole, and it's going to be the same type of adjustment as we would be doing in crosswind, which is min, no elevation, P1 numbers. I would say this of the par 3s are definitely an extremely good chance for an hole in one. On hole number 5, if we do have a tailwind, we can, to a degree, sending it here by trying to go directly over the first bit of water, bounce on the fairway pad, and then either land on the second one or try to go even further. That obviously will be a much simpler way of getting an albatross here, but as having headwind, I'm starting with a quarterback at max, red rain by roughline, swapping to my apocalypse, and as all the apocalypse has more power than the quarterback level 10, it will always open into the same spot. Now, some curl to the right, and using 1 top spin and 3 right spin, adjustment is max plus 10. For the second shot, we are going to use our sniper when we are this far off. So what we're going to do here now is that we are going to really have to think about what type of wind direction we have here now. Now we do have a headwind. What's going to happen with headwind? It's going to be that we're going to have a compressed ball guideline, which will then make the ball turn left. Okay, as the green here, as you can see with the ball guideline, is going to slightly move left, and it's something that we then have to either offset for, or we have to use spins in a different way to ensure that we are not missing left. I'm using here as my reference as a your turn plus yardage, and we can see here now that, I mean, I'm trying to see if there is some type of sticky spot, but I can't really find anything. Aiming through the hole here, and once I'm making my adjustment, I'm using an adjustment that is max, no elevation, P3 numbers from here. What needs to be said though is that the no elevation is what I judge the true elevation to be here, but as always, when it comes to the different type of wind directions, it may require less or more to compensate for what happens after the first bounce. bounces on the fairway up towards the green. You can see here now, due to the headwind, the ball slows down and it becomes pushed more left as it trails off quicker than we're missing on the left hand side. So hole number 5 here, if we cannot send it to get closer, this is most definitely going to be a tough par 5 to drop consistently. For hole number 6, a par 4, here we can go for green if we do have a tailwind. I would say like this as well, that if we do have a crosswind and even a headwind, we could use a topspin boost ball and do some sort of a double bounce over that last piece of rough that we're trying to have our first bounce to bounce over right now. But obviously everything simplifies if we do have a tailwind. So we start at max club, 5.8 topspin, 2 left spin is what I'm using, adjust max plus a 10. And now I'm using max overpower with a slower needle with approximately 3/4 of a ball of left curl. Now, obviously, you can use a ball with less wind resistance, which means that it will fly longer. You can use more topspin and then you will possibly go to green and actually attack the pin for an hole-in-one. But if you do not have the means to do that, meaning that you don't have the club or you don't have the ball, then we're going to have to play a wedge. And the wedge, super simple. It's a standard EB school play, and I'm going to display this for you here now. So you can see here that I'm stretching out to max to see where max club is, and then I look to where the pin stands in relation to max and min club. Then I judge the club distance from there, and that equals then my slider. 20% elevation is what I'm using here with EB School with no spin. And the beauty with playing with Endbringer is obviously that if you are that terrible like myself to hit great with a wedge like this, then you will see yourself still have a good chance to drop for an eagle. If you do have a direct headwind and you don't have the possibility to play with a topspin boost ball on off tee, you can lay up. And then you have to attack the pin with a short iron from distance. Still very makeable, but obviously if we can send it, we're gonna send it. Hole number 8 of the Southern Pines can be played in many different ways in my opinion. One way of playing is to go directly onto the green using backspin and attack the pin. I do think that's the safest way of playing this hole. I'm not saying it's going to be the best way all the time, but many of the times it will be the best play because we obviously take away a bunch of bounce overs over the stupid bunkers and the roughs and stuff like that. So it really is taking away a lot of obstacles from play. Now, backspin and right spin and getting the ball, the aim to be on the green with the ball guideline through the hole. Adjust 10% elevation is what's being used here. And here you can see using a little bit of overpower as well, which is just before circle drop as overpower. This to compensate for the headwind, as it's otherwise going to land further back than what we want to. And it lands a little bit further back still than what we aimed, and the ball rolls down beautifully into the hole. Like I said, this is just one way of playing this particular hole. You can bounce over the bunkers with curl and a lot of side spin and stuff like that. So there are many ways of playing this particular hole nowadays compared to what it once were. Mainly as we now have many different type of golf balls accessible that we didn't have in the past. For hole number 9 of the Southern Pines, this is a long par 5, a pretty boring par 5, I would say. Here we would benefit immensely by having a power 10 ball to be used. In this instance, we are going to bounce over the bunker and the rough there in the middle, trying to get as far down the fairway possible. The further down we get, the better it's going to be, because we will be having a better angle. Now, I cannot stress enough how much of an advantage this type of hole will be if you do have higher level clubs and also being able to use a good ball. If you do have lower level clubs and are limiting yourself to, let's say, power 6 balls, this hole will be really complicated to consistently making an eagle, because we need to have in mind that we're not just going to have tailwind all the time. We're going to have some crosswind, we're going to have some headwind, and that's going to be really problematic. Once we do get down with the drive, we are using max plus 10 as the adjust. We are around 440 yards. Now for the second shot, here you can make a decision. We always make decisions, but in this type of scenario, we can either go for the hole, doing an albatross attempt, or we are going right side of the rough, just landing the ball onto the green. If your intention is to go for a safe eagle, I would say play with the sniper. That gives you a better accuracy and a better ball guideline. If you do want to go for the albatross, and if you're not having distance enough, the cataclysm is most definitely a good club to use. Second shot with no elevation as the true elevation. Have in mind though that elevation will definitely fluctuate depending on what type of play you're doing. So don't steer yourself blind on the zero there. So make sure to kind of be adaptable, that you can make some changes and some switches to adapt to the type of play that you are deciding to play. If everything goes well, we clip the rough, we roll up onto the green, and in this case, we are missing just on the right-hand side, but at least we give ourselves a chance for the albatross. On hole number 8, we're going to box in the red ring, left side by bunker, right side by rough. Then we're going to apply spin to pin. So we want to have the ball guideline just at the hole, and this applies when we do have a tailwind. If we do have a headwind, we do want to have the ball guideline through the hole, because we're going to otherwise stop short in line. Adjustment, medium distance with a 5% elevation. And then we're going to center the ball and hit perfect. Have in mind that the adjustment will differ with the different wind angles here, because it will affect the ball differently, and we always want to keep aiming at the hole. Perfect ball into the rough, rolls up the green, dropping it dead center for a lovely hole-in-one here on hole number 8. If you don't feel confident or comfortable with the rough bump, you can always bounce on the fairway, but a rough bump will allow you to not have that much wind to compensate for once it hits the ground, which makes it for a much more consistent way of dropping. For hole number 8, here I'm playing an NMT, and I'm using 3 right spin and 5.8 top spin. This to make sure that this shot can be replicated even with lower level apocalypse. Adjustment, I'm using max with no elevation, and the reason I'm doing that is because it's not because 0 is the true elevation. The true elevation I would judge from here is going to be plus 15, but the reason I decreased elevation is to ensure that I can play the NMT and still hit the pad, as I from an NMT position are aiming very close to the rough line to the left. So, second shot here now is going to be played with a grizzly from min line, right? I love those type of shots. And the thing with this is that obviously you can't play the grizzly from absolute min line if you are having a tailwind on the approach. Then you can either push up rings from min and still play grizzly, or that you're playing with a short iron instead. But now having a headwind together with crosswind, or if we would have just had a straight crosswind, we're playing from the min line. Now, from min line, I'm playing 25% elevation and min club. So always want to try to do the correct club distance here together with elevation. But does that mean that this is the true elevation? No, it's not. It's more a 0 for the true elevation here, but the only reason that the elevation increases is because I use the elevation to increase the adjustment to compensate for what happens after the first bounce. So after the first bounce, the wind will affect the ball. After the second bounce and the third bounce, the wind will affect the ball. And then I increase the elevation to compensate for that. Hole number 8 offers a really good chance for an eagle. For the drive here on hole number 9, here is all about what type of club and ball, and also what wind you have, if you can reach over to the 2 fairway pads or fairway islands that you do have after the water. If you can reach the center of them too, then you do have a pretty nice and sweet approach towards the pin. It does, however, require a lot of topspin, or that you do in some sort of a max OP shot with less topspin and reach over there. So the video is displaying a more conservative route, which always gives you a chance for a drop, but staying away from the water. Adjust max plus 10 using 3 top spin, 2 left spin. I'm playing with a power 5 ball, this to ensure that I do have the power for the second shot. Now, when it comes to the second shot, we can do 2 ways. I'm going to show you both, and we're going to start with the more aggressive one, which is going to be a rough bomb. So we're gonna have, not at the pot obviously, so we're gonna go at that one, and we're gonna take a look at the rough bomb. So this is a more technical one where it requires that you do play with the cataclysm. So what we're gonna do here now, or what we're doing, is to put the target at max club, ball guideline to go just to the hole. And you can see here now that even if we are aiming inside the bush, it's not affecting the ball guideline at all. So aiming there with the ball guideline to hole. Here from max line, I'm adjusting max, no elevation, P5 numbers. And then to compensate for the extra push that we're getting from the tailwind, I'm going to do circle break under power. So you can see that I'm centering the ball, moving back to circle break under power, and doing my best to hit perfect. A perfect ball here now will land where we have been aiming, you can see there, and it rolls up towards the pin, dropping for a lovely albatross. If you don't feel comfortable with an aggressive one like that, you can always play with the sniper. However, though, bouncing up towards the pin is not going to be as consistent as a rough bump, especially from this long distance, but it's always going to be super safe. So let's take a look at that one just for reference. Alright, so now the sniper. You can see I can't reach for the rough bomb, but I also don't have the top spin for doing so. So I'm using 2 right spin, and now it's all about finding the sweet spot with the top spin. And here I'm moving right and right, feeling that the more right I am, the more consistent the rollout should be. What I do need, or what I do forget about here, is that it's actually slightly uphill when the ball comes towards the green. So we kind of have to aim with the ball guideline closer towards the pin and then this. I mean, the idea with offsetting for the tailwind push is good, but I'm offsetting way too much. 10% elevation is what I judge this normal bounce up shot to be needed, whereof the rough bump, as you remember, was needed nothing. So even with a great left, we're safe and it bounces on the fairway, but as you can see, we don't have speed enough to give the ball a chance. But that's a different way of attacking the pin on the second shot here on a tough par 5, such as hole number 9. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching this playthrough for 18 holes of the Attitude 18-hole Cup. Have in mind, once again, that the wins shown here in the video are variable. It's also lower than what you will see when you are playing, because here we have boosted rewards, but I still hope that the video will help you in your success. Scan the QR code here on the screen, or go directly to patreon.com/golfclashtommy for the ultimate tournament text guides.